Hey, everyone. Thanks for coming. It is crazy loud. OK. So I'm Robert Anderson. I work for Spring ML. We're a, I guess boutique is the term people use. I don't know. We're a consulting company based in Pleasanton, but I work in Indianapolis. We do a lot of AI, machine learning. I've been with the company for a couple of years. We do a lot of Einstein analytics projects. And I'm a technical architect, sometimes an engagement manager, but I'm the guy that gets the data where it needs to be. Forward-looking statement, really quick, everything. I don't think anything that's really forward-looking here, but if I accidentally say something that's new, don't buy stocks based on it. I think that's good, yeah. So quick agenda for what I'm going to talk through today. First, talk through high-level why MuleSoft. I'm sort of a developer. I don't always think about why I need to use the tool. I just use the tool I've been given, but there are a lot of good business reasons why you might need an integration tool and why MuleSoft might be what you need. We're going to look at a couple integration patterns on different ways that you can use MuleSoft, pulling data through databases, pulling data directly into Einstein. There's a couple different considerations there. And then I've got a couple very short demos to give you a feel for what MuleSoft looks like. Before we get started, just so I get a feel for you all, how many of you have used an integration tool to do some kind of ETL to move data? OK, so you all know ETL. All right, so we'll touch on a couple things there. MuleSoft really puts itself as an ESB, which when I first was given MuleSoft to use on a project to get data into Einstein Analytics, I'm like, what's an ESB? I don't care. I just need to move data. So hopefully I can give you a couple good ideas on kind of the difference there and some nuances. So some key takeaways I want to make sure we all get, although I assume a lot of you are more IT people and less business. But really the important thing that it's easy to forget, but you really need to pay attention to is why you need to get your data into Einstein Analytics and why you might need data that's not already in Salesforce. And that's to get end-to-end insight into your data. You might have critical systems that are not operating within Salesforce. You might have revenue systems, all sorts of things where you have things that are happening outside of Salesforce, but you need to look at that data for your analytics. And if you only look at what's happening in Salesforce, you're not getting an end-to-end and really comprehensive view of what's going on. MuleSoft and a lot of integration tools can support some really complex data requirements. Sometimes you can dump data straight in, but there's a lot of nuance and tricky things that you have to do with data. It's usually not ready to go. And then in the demo, we'll talk on a couple things that you can do to increase data freshness. Is really just getting data into Einstein Analytics as often as possible. You don't want data every week. You don't want even data every day. You want to try to get data in as quickly and as often as possible from your source systems. So real quick, I don't know how familiar you are with MuleSoft, but not familiar. All right. So MuleSoft is an integration platform as a service. It's in competition with things like Informatica and whatnot. You can have it on-prem. You can have it hosted locally as a service, but you can also have it in the cloud. But it provides a larger kind of ecosystem of integration. It's not just this kind of singular tool. And with that, you get the hundreds, I think, of pre-built connectors. So if you need to connect to something, you don't have to go and mess with a bunch of configuration things. You can go into the whatever it's called and go download a connector to where you need to push your data or pull it. So you get a lot of power there. It's useful as an ESB, an enterprise service bus, and as an ETL tool. When I first saw MuleSoft, I'm like, great, another ETL tool. I don't care. I need to move data. But MuleSoft, more broadly, is an ESB, and I'll talk about that. And then now, of course, MuleSoft is part of Salesforce. So if you're using Salesforce and you need to move data, MuleSoft is what they're going to point you to. The other day, they actually gave me this slide. It's no longer Integration Cloud, if you've heard of that. It's just MuleSoft Anypoint Platform. I'm interested to see what branding they put out with that. But here's Salesforce's view of how you can use MuleSoft to take data from all these places and many, many more to get it into all of your things in Salesforce. Today, we're going to focus on analytics. But if you get MuleSoft, you can pull data into all sorts of places within Salesforce. All right, so why, we touched on this in a second ago, but I want to give a few more ideas. Why would you need MuleSoft? So not all of your critical data is within Salesforce. I've been on a number of projects where the simplest thing, maybe you sell things, but then you need to analyze revenue or revenue recognition. You need to know how you're actually getting paid. And that data might live in Oracle or SAP or whatever. You need to pull that data in. It might not be clean enough to pull it in easily, so MuleSoft can help you do that. I've worked with a healthcare client that wanted to track enrollment and disenrollment data, and that came from like 12 different systems. So getting that into Einstein was tricky, and MuleSoft helped a lot. Lots of different ways, lots of different critical systems that you need to get your data from. Really, a lot of times you need a ETL tool because you've got really complex business logic and complex mappings. You've got crazy amounts. If you all do integration, you know data's a mess. To get it all combined in a meaningful way, you got to do a lot of crazy work, and MuleSoft can help with that. Time-consuming manual processes is probably the kind of gimme of why you need an integration tool. I was just on a project where I think they spent like 300 man-hours a week or a month, something crazy. So automating a process where they were using Excel to do VLOOKUPs and instead use an integration tool saved them a ton of time. And I've got a slide at the end if we have time, but Einstein Analytics has ways to pull in external data built in, but that has a lot of limitations. So oftentimes you'll need a much more powerful tool. Let's talking about some integration patterns first. MuleSoft is an ETL tool. I have a background of a lot of Microsoft business intelligence where you're just doing bulk loads from your source systems into an integration database, writing some views to tie things together, bulk loading it daily or something into Einstein. Common data sources like your data warehouse, operational systems, flat files, even APIs, but kind of traditional daily bulk loads. Within that database, you can do all sorts of things like snapshotting. You could do crazy row-based calculations where you've got to do windowing functions to compare today versus yesterday for tons and tons of data, and you want to do that ahead of time. Lots of things you can do within that kind of traditional view of analytics and how you use an integration tool. But really, MuleSoft is an ESB, and we'll get to that in a second. But to give you a flavor of how MuleSoft looks, I've got a quick demo here. So this is AnyPoint Studio. How many of you have used AnyPoint Studio? OK, cool. Don't judge me if this isn't the best project. But yeah, so a real simple ETL. I've got a listener that lets me kick off the job. I'm reading from a flat file, just a CSV on my computer.
I don't think it works.
Oh, it didn't work. Sorry. He told me it would work. What do I need to do? Do I need to exit?
Drag it over.
Or if I just... All right. Now we got it. Oh. Cool. Sorry about that. So yeah, real simple ETL. You're reading from a flat file. It's got a single line, a single piece of data. You can do transformations, but we're not doing anything here. And then from the side here, from the Exchange, actually I'll show you the Exchange. And if you go to a MuleSoft booth, all of them have this up, so they love it. But here are all these crazy connectors. For me, I just searched for analytics. And here's the Salesforce Analytics connector. You give it some credentials, you're good to go. Let's close this. So to get this going, oh, I didn't stop my last one. All right, let's start it again. So I come from more of a database, data warehouse background. Really, this is much more of a developer tool. See all this crazy amounts of, oh, did it not? Hey, error. Yes, try again. There's a lot going on here. So while this runs, I'll show you a few quick things. All of this is driven by XML. All of the things within here can be parameterized, so you can have one kind of flow that's flexible, and then you pass in objects. So if you need to load 100 tables for your integration database or something, you can parameterize all of that and reuse the same flow. But right now, it's not. All right, deployed. Great. So that deployed, we need to kick it off. Let's open a new tab here. Give that a second. Once I kick that off, it actually started doing the data load, and it should have given me a data set ID. Great. So let's go into our demo org, go to Analytics Studio. First, I'll show you the data manager to kind of show you how it's pushing this data in. You can tell that I've been testing it. So here's our upload from 2 seconds ago. It loaded one row. You can see there's actually kind of 4 things going on here. And I'll talk about that a little bit as we get into some more advanced use cases and integration patterns. But that was able to push some data into my data set. And there we go. We've got a row of exciting hello world data. Very exciting. All right, so back to some slides. So that's a really simple use case. The warning I'll give you is that if you need to push millions of records, that's not going to work. And some people I've worked with get very frustrated at first, but really to talk about MuleSoft, oops, sorry. Need to close that. Good now. All right. So MuleSoft is an ESB, an enterprise service bus. The big thing that everyone at MuleSoft talk about is that it's centered around building and interacting with APIs. It's meant to kind of sync data between systems, even in real time. I see some nodding in agreement. I appreciate that. But it's a tool for, at an enterprise level, syncing tons of data between systems. It's super highly flexible and customizable. You can parameterize everything. You can do lots of super powerful things, and I'll show you an example of that in a second. It's got some really powerful batching options on how you load data. You don't just have to do a single bulk load, but you can control multi-threads and asynchronous batch processing. And it's enterprise scalable. You can have clustered servers. You can have failover, all the enterprise things that you need. MuleSoft can be super powerful as an ESB. So some batching options that you can use. You can just use no batching, load everything at once. But like I said, that really only works for small data sets, less than about 100,000. You can do synchronous batching, so kind of batches one at a time. For larger data sets, up to about 1 million. And then after you get over 1 million, you really need to look at some more robust ways of loading data with small asynchronous batching. That might not make any sense, but I'll show you some stuff that I'll show you within MuleSoft how you can do that. So as a quick visual of how this works, when you use it as an ESB and you use some of that asynchronous functionality, you can load data into your integration database really kind of any way you want. You can do batching if it's huge. You can do singular loads if you've just got small lookup files or something. But then when you're pushing a huge file into Einstein, what you actually do is load it into the Insights external data object first. And then you call a process. So when we looked at the data manager and you saw that it said like load and then register and optimize and all that. So first you load it, and you can push it as fast as you want through batching, and then you call the process to actually create the data set. And I'll show that in a second. So yeah, here we go. And I won't run. So in the example where we did this, I believe we were loading about 7 million records, and the flow took about half hour. And I'll give you one good note on this as well. There is a limit on how many times you can run a flow within Einstein. It used to be 40. Now, actually, in winter, it's 50. So, and I think I've heard, okay, forward-looking, I think I've heard it might go to 100. So with that, you could load data up to like every 15 minutes. I think we were on some projects with Salesforce, and we tried to do that, and they slapped our hands. But I think conceivably, you could have up to about 100 data flows running a day. So if you only had a few, you could load data even every 15 minutes. But back to talking about asynchronous batching. And this is super complicated, and I won't run it. But let me give you a few ideas of what's going on here. So that's separated into these 3 flows here. This top is kind of the control. You first get your data set that you're writing. You get a data set ID that you're going to write to. And then you've got this like purpley reference that then references the second flow, which actually handles pulling in the data from the database. For pulling the data from the database, you can turn on streaming, which basically means you don't wait until you get all the data. As soon as you get a first batch, you start processing it. And then for each of those batches, if you can see what I've got highlighted there, you loop through and asynchronously start pushing them into that external data object. And then once that is done, you call the process to register and process the data set. So I know this is a lot, and it's probably intimidating, and I think that's kind of fair warning. You're not just going to give kind of a business analyst 9 million rows of data and expect them to load it. But if you need lots of power to load data, and you have MuleSoft as an ESB to do other things within your enterprise, it can load a ton of data into Einstein pretty quickly as well. All right, back to our slides. All right, yeah, so I guess about wrapped up. So really to recap, don't get stuck in just loading your data from Salesforce, but think about all of the data that might support actionable insights and try to pull it all in if it's meaningful. If you have complex data requirements, you need to move a ton of data. MuleSoft is super powerful, super flexible, scalable. It's a little bit scary, so don't get scared. And try to get your data in as quickly as possible so your business users know what's going on. Apparently this was a popular keynote, so they told me to include this slide. I appreciate that. There's a keynote in 2 days at 1. You should check it out. They'll probably talk about MuleSoft. They'll probably explain why it's not Integration Cloud, but just any point again. And actually, I've got a minute. I've got 3 minutes, so I'm going to do this last slide. So why you might not need MuleSoft. How many of you have used replication in Einstein? Not very many, OK. So the standard way you pull data into Einstein Analytics is through a data flow, where you basically have kind of a step of how you pull. It's a tool within Einstein Analytics that lets you build a data set. And it's all point and click. It's not the best, but it's pretty easy to use. You can actually pull from objects that have been replicated, and they're now calling it data sync within the winter release. But data flows can use any object that's replicated, and you can replicate objects from all sorts of different cloud-based providers. So if you've got data in AWS BigQuery, we've got a demo up on our booth on that. Any of these systems, you can still use the kind of built-in data flow builder. But obviously in an enterprise, you've got data on-premise. You've got data that needs some really complicated logic applied to it. That might not work. But check this out first, just in case. All right, I think that's it. Thank you all so much for coming. If you want to get a plushie, they're giving these out. This is Max, I think. Anyway, I'll be over on the side for some questions for a little bit, and then Spring ML has a booth up on the 3rd floor in the Einstein Ridge. All right, thank you all so much.